video is on off.
Oh.
They're doing all kinds of crazy things, but not knowing whether the video was on or off. And so, I guess
there's a global viral video going on there as well, Ramesh. One guy stands up to take a stroll. In boxes.
Yeah.
We have 2 more minutes, I guess, yeah?
1 minute more.
Yeah.
So we start right on time?
Yes, definitely. So let's stick to the perfect timing.
Right.
Yeah.
To start on time, people need to connect.
Are you going to ask the questions? Do some of us have the same questions? Just out of curiosity.
No.
Oh.
Let's take it as a conversation. So usually we'll try to build it up from whoever the previous speaker is ending with. On that note, we can take on the next question. But usually, so my task would be I will try to keep that within the skeleton framework of questions that I send, so that we can keep it within a framework.
Sure. And you know, you numbered the question. Are those kind of the logical order you plan to kind of attack some of these?
Not necessarily. Sure. So it will be within that area. But not logically, not chronologically ordered.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we are live on Facebook right now.
Right on.
So I think, Glenn, whenever you're ready, I think we can start.
Thank you everyone for joining in today. And a special thanks to our panelists for accepting our invitation for this webinar. When we initially came up with this idea, we wanted a forum that will discuss about the positive side of business recalibrating through digitalization to a new world after COVID-19. And we wanted to bring the industry experts to share their opinions. And I thank the team for doing a wonderful job in putting this together. Leading this timely conversation will be our moderator, Inosh Praveen, and he has specifically asked me not to waste time introducing him. So Inosh, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Glenn. So the clock is ticking right now, and we have exactly 90 minutes. Let me give a quick backdrop for what we are going to discuss today. So the conversation today is going to be about how COVID-19 has changed the way we live and work almost overnight. Analysts are struggling to keep pace with the impact of economies, sectors, and corporates. So one thing that we already know is that the crisis is accelerating and the trend towards digitalization as well. And now I have like a Herculean task of managing 7 thought leaders right here and their diverse perspectives. So bringing these industry heavyweights to one platform in itself is a major feat. Since time is precious, I will keep the pleasantries very short. So to start off, we have Oshada Senanayaka. He's Director General at Telecommunications Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka and also the Director of Sri Lanka CERT. We have Ramesh Shanmuganathan, Group CIO, Executive Vice President at John Keells Holdings. We have Imran Furqan, CEO at Racing, Zulfa Jifri, founder. I think Zulfa is not here, but Zulfa will be joining us, founder of PickMe. Joshua Kanagaratnam, Senior Consultant at Zendesk. Lakshmi Vijayasundara, Co-founder and Chief Executive Officer at Iron Technologies and BoardPack. We have Ruanti Fernando, Chief Process and Delivery Officer at Enable Private Limited, and myself, Director of README and Ambassador for GSC Sri Lanka. I also recently became Director for Founder Institute. I think we will have to wait, not wait for Zulfa, and we'll straight dive into what we are going to discuss today. Just to make it a little bit more easier for our audience, I have just shared all the LinkedIn profiles of our members here. So anybody who wants to connect, please feel free to. So without further ado, diving right into discussion, deep discussion. I'm going to kickstart with you, Imran, to set the tone for the discussion ahead, because you focus on advising companies, individuals, and governments on the impact of digital disruption, economic and political events. So the question is for you is, can you
Hey, Ramesh, there's some static coming from your machine.
Is it?
Okay, that's gone now. There was some static, right?
Yes, there was.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we are cool now. We are good to continue. So yeah, I think that was a grand opening for Imran. So Imran, so my first question to you is to set the tone of the discussion. So can you lay out the economic impact on the world right now, and also the Sri Lankan economy from this current pandemic?
Hi, everybody, and hi, Inosh. Look, I think the Chinese word for crisis, which is weiji, is the best to describe the situation we are in, right? It means, it has two characters. It means danger, which obviously we are faced with. It also means, also has the character for opportunity, which I think is the best to describe where we are now, right? So just we'll start with the danger, because we need to know what is in front of us. And then I'll also talk a little bit about the opportunity, and I'm sure all of you will also talk about the opportunity as well. Look, the IMF, has done some predictions. The World Trade Organization, ILO, World Bank. You need to take some of them with a bit pinch of salt, simply because we are in the middle of a crisis, right? So they don't have kind of all the information to process and give us a very accurate one. But let's just look at some of the figures they're talking about, right? For the world, the IMF is talking about a loss of GDP or economic activity of about $9 trillion over the next 2 years, right? So to put that in context, that is the size of the economies of Germany and Japan, right? So we just remove them out, and that's the kind of loss we've had so far. The ILO, the International Labour Organization, is talking about a loss of about 200 million full-time jobs. Cannot imagine what part-time jobs it could be. In addition to that, the World Trade Organization talks about a loss of between 13 to 32% of world trade, which is very, very significant. For Sri Lanka, the World Bank says that we could have somewhere between negative 0.5 and negative 3% of growth, right, and recovering to 0.2% to 1.2% next year. And it forecasts everything from rise in poverty to balance of payments issues. We have 4.8 billion that needs to be paid off this year, including $1 billion due in September as well. So those are the challenges we have. But these are challenges are not unique to Sri Lanka. They're challenges to every country in the world, right? So and also what I'd like to point out to people, which they don't really appreciate, is that the physical infrastructure, right, is completely intact. It's not like a world war, hurricane, or tsunami, where the physical infrastructure is damaged, and as humans, it takes some time to repair to come back. So physical infrastructure is intact, but the enemy is invisible. So therefore, you don't really know where the impact will be. Opportunity, right? In the last week, I've had calls from CEOs of so many of our IT and BPM companies talking about opportunities that they've got, right? So there's a legal process outsourcing CEO who has been chasing a contract in the UK for many years. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he gets the contract. I mean, it's amazing what the shutdown has done in terms of concentrating minds. Okay? The Colombo tea auction that has been there for 150 plus years is suddenly automated overnight. right? I know they've been trying it for 20 years to automate it. I hope they don't stop there. There are other processes that can happen. Let's go to blockchain to see the provenance of our tea, to guarantee that it is authentic. We go to a whole, cryptocurrency-based and also blockchain-based payment system so that Iran and Russia can pay, because we don't have to go through the US dollar. I'm just saying where we can go, right? Last night, I got a call from another CEO who's telling me, look, Imran, a apparel retailer in the US is suddenly talking about virtual reality and augmented reality. Now he has this product, right? He's been trying to get them to utilize them, and now the retailer has come and said, look, nobody's going to go into those fitting rooms because you're very scared about, you don't know who's been in the fitting room before you, right? So I mean, even though these things are going to take some time, the opportunities are coming rapidly, and I think it's a very difficult time in terms of physical infrastructure, but I think we are in terms of our players, because you can now virtually deliver a service, right? And I know Lakshman is going to talk to you about marketing and how it has leveled the playing field for marketing for our SaaS companies. But I have had Sri Lankan ACCA and CIMA players, right, who produce world-class winners, who come and told me, look, I want to teach for students in the UK, in Australia, in other parts of the world, and I can't do that because the infrastructure of sending lecturers or hiring courses are prohibitive. Cannot imagine how costly it is. They are now lecturing towards any student anywhere in the world because the exams are very similar, right? The same exams are across the world. And I cannot imagine the kind of opportunities that we're going to have in the future. And also the process of digitization, right? Osha will talk to you about what government is doing. A friend of mine, contacted me the other day and said, look, SPC is struggling to get the orders going, right? So initially, this is the first 2 or 3 days in terms of the crisis. So I contacted him. He contacted a couple of managers in some of the SPC, State Pharmaceutical Corporation, also Salah. They developed a very fast for 1 or 2 outlets. They've had 10,000 orders, right? And this is for free because it's a Sri Lankan guy, right? And we're looking at collaboration. Amazing opportunity, I think, the next few years.
And I think, Imran, a lot of CEOs are calling you. I think you're doing something right there.
Simple. It's because it's about authenticity, right? We've been talking to clients. This crisis for our clients is not new, right? We've been telling our clients at the end of 2020 there will be a global financial crisis. We've been telling our clients about an epidemic problem. Now clients are calling me from different parts of the world and said, "Oh, so you were right. Now what is next?" Right? So it's not something we've been doing quickly. You have to create a lot of previous track records, and that is why I think a lot of our players have a lot of opportunity because there is a track record.
Okay, so I'll hold that there, and I'll quickly hop over to Ramesh. So let me stress this: in 1 month, COVID-19 has destroyed pretty much jobs that has been there for decades. So my question to you would be, what impact has the COVID-19 had on the wider JKH group and, from your perspective, the wider Sri Lankan corporate sector? You're on mute, Ramesh.
Yeah, things are still evolving, as anyone could presume that obviously the most impacted sectors for JKH is travel, tourism, construction to an extent. So as you know, that's obviously one of the key sectors which got impacted because of COVID, the travel, the transportation, the tourism sectors. And as anyone could kind of extrapolate, it's very difficult for anyone to kind of fathom the long-reaching impact this would have. I think I could stop short of saying that this is definitely not going to be a V-shaped recovery. It's going to be a U-shaped recovery. How long is the U going to be? Whether 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months is anybody's guess. So the challenges for us today, as for any other company, is first to be resilient. Right? We got to hold fort, stabilize stuff. Then probably look at as next phase, reimagine in terms of what is the new normal, and then remodel ourselves in the long term in terms of where we could capitalize. So as anyone could see, that there are obviously silver lining in this whole crisis as well, right? There are certain sectors which are emerging. Online has gone through the roof. Everyone was clamoring to kind of buy things online. Distance learning is taking off. Telemedicine is taking off. Right, so there are obviously certain sectors which are going to lend itself in terms of what's evolving, and work ethics are changing. People are comfortable working from home. So I think the new normal, obviously the baseline is getting laid and people are figuring it out, right? So I don't think there is going to be a prescriptive way of finding it out, but I am sure every day a new MVP is going to be born, right? So if you look at in the last 2 weeks, what we've seen, all of a sudden you have an application for fish delivery. All of a sudden you have an application for even today delivery of cash to home. Sampath Bank launched with PickMe, delivering cash to home, right? So every day there is a new MVP which is getting born, because the entrepreneurial ability, I think today is probably eliminating friction and finding solutions for the needs which are kind of spontaneously arising, right? So that is going to be the new normal, which will define in terms of where Sri Lanka will evolve, where the corporate sector will evolve. And as I said, COVID has become a net neutralizer, right? It has given everyone the opportunity. If you have the speed of execution, you could capitalize on it, right? So for Sri Lanka, as you would know, we've been predominantly service-oriented sector, right? 60% of our GDP is on services. So we are going to get impacted big time because of that reason, right? So unless we have new ways of repurposing our assets, looking at inward in terms of where we could be self-sufficient rather than relying on imports, would be definite way that we should be looking at and leveraging tech as well.
You actually mentioned new normal a few times. Is firefighting on social media is also new normal?
Definitely, yeah. Because if you look at today, I think everyone has become, I wouldn't say addicted to online. So a lot of people who kind of even didn't want to get online is online today, right? So we had so many people who were ordering stuff on Keels online for the first time, right? So we've actually confronted with issues which an average online user shouldn't be, right? So it is a learning curve which has kind of set its pace, and I'm sure that every user is going to kind of be get adapted to that new normal, which is going to be online is everyday occurrence, and everyone will obviously have an internet connection going forward, right? And I think that's going to be the pressure TRC and the telcos are going to face.
Exactly, yeah. And Ramesh, you're doing an amazing job with that. I think, yeah, great estimate. So, how do you right now and talking over to
Sorry, Anosh, we can't hear you. Ramesh
Yeah.
has to go on mute. Okay, we're good.
Okay, so moving on to Lakmini, we actually had an interesting conversation. We spoke about this being an equalizer a few days back, and that actually brings to a really good question of has COVID-19 been a great equalizer for Sri Lankan SaaS companies in terms of being able to pitch for work without even having to take extensive travel? Because I think even travel is something that you mentioned. From your perspective, what opportunities has this crisis brought for you, for both PAC, for N1 Technologies?
Sure, Anosh. So actually, if you take the IT industry, I mean, out of all the industries, I personally feel it's one of the industries that will bounce back the fastest. To start off with, we are working. I mean, work from home is quite easy for us, relatively. From day one itself, just took the machines, connectivity is there. So in a sense, if you look at a factory operation, our factory is working. But the initial shock, the problem is initially IT always works for other industries. So our clients are either finance or retail or whatever it is, and they're mostly in my case, when it comes to both PAC and Iron1, we're a B2B company. So they're all companies that suddenly got hit in all these different countries as well as Sri Lanka with lockdowns. So on one side, there's a sudden, for a couple of months till they get settled, and depending on the sort of impact that they have had in terms of finances and all sorts of things, we are definitely impacted as a vendor. So whatever we do, however equalized we are, there is that impact. But having said that, the opportunity, as Ramesh also mentioned, the opportunity is kind of crazy. I mean, if you think of it, those days we had to actually travel, we had to compete. Let's say we have a client in New York, right? And there's a vendor in New York. They can go, have drinks or whatever it is, and do all these things that we have to travel. The cost, the whole thing. So that completely is neutralized in every country. And that's, for a company like ours, it's fairly overwhelming actually, because now hundreds of countries have this potential, but then again, it comes back. I mean, we have bandwidth, we can't go hiring people at this time. And as Ramesh also mentioned, we have to stabilize first, right? We can't just go hiring because there's a potential possibility, because again, there's chaos. We don't know whether it'll end now, whether it'll end in 3 months, 8, whatever. So along with that, prioritization for companies like us has become really important. So we are, as much as the potential is there and equalized, we have to make sure that we put our money and our efforts with limited resources at this point, because we can't be careless right now, right? Because there's an unknown horizon that we have to look after. So with that, as a company, I'm just saying, we are looking at a lot more online that we did before, because as a B2B company, as much as we were SaaS, because it was B2B and senior level people like board members, we had to have we had to go and do demos in their presence, etc. Now that's kind of neutralized, because obviously, they can't even ask, let's say in Mumbai, they can't even ask the Mumbai guy to come over. No? So even our Mumbai office, the people at home. So literally, that kind of effect, I believe, to companies like us who are selling B2B, it opens, and then we have to figure out which markets, which areas will focus, where's our strength, and obviously buy those databases, go for those camps. There's a lot of work, but yes, the opportunity is there. It's up to us to be creative in that sense. And I tell you, IT, the government, and there was at NES and all that. Definitely, this is a time that it has opened up. So we should jump on it.
So let me also just try to get that right myself. So what you're saying is this is actually a new point of view that I'm also getting to know. So what you're saying is IT being the enabler, even if other industries are getting hit, it's eventually hitting IT as well, tech companies as well.
Of course, because the thing is, we get paid by them, right? So for example, there is a unit in Iron One that did, US retail. The projects that they were doing suddenly just got stopped. We had projects, running for like 18 months already ordered. So they just like stopped some of that. And I believe slowly when retail sort of picks up again, those things will come back, but it just affects IT. And that's an interesting thing you said, because when I get calls from people, because obviously, everyone's trying to look at the positive side of things and all our messaging is positive. So I get calls saying, oh, so Lakshmi, so things must be great for you. And I'm not sure what to say really, because are we supposed to just say, yeah, everything is, everyone's having difficulty, but we are great. But that's really not the truth. It's really difficult. But as I mentioned, the comeback, because in a sense, our factory is open. We need to get the orders, we need to get the money. So all that will sort of get solved by, like let's say, for example, John Keels, now they have so many matters they have to solve. So when they solve it, the order will come. But right now, everything is frozen, like especially the lockdown. Even the people in those companies didn't know what was happening, right? They can't even get a check done. Or whatever. I think checks don't even exist anymore these days. So, so IT actually, it's a misconception that IT is doing, IT is fine. It's not really fine. There are pockets of fine, as well as it will pick up. It will pick up. It's one of those things that can pick up, but IT also is affected.
Right. So thank you for that. Thank you for the thought. Actually, I think it's something new which I didn't see in any other webinars. So it's actually coming from this webinar is actually good, because it sets a tone for what we are discussing. So flying over to Joshua. Hey Joshua, so I'm meeting you for the first time, and this is what technology is enabling us to do. Meeting you for the first time and having a webinar discussing deep topics. So since from Zendesk, I would like to ask you. We are operating on crisis mode right now. So there are reports of a huge uptake in tools of remote working. From what you see, how real is this, and will it continue post-pandemic?
Yeah, great question, and thanks for having me. And it's great to meet you and all the other panelists as well here. So my answer to that is yes, it's absolutely real. Everything that's happening right now was really inevitably going to happen, to some degree anyways. And if you look at some of those tools, the numbers speak for themselves. So pre-coronavirus, you have tools like Slack, you have tools like Zoom. They have over 100,000 paying businesses. So businesses that use them as their central nervous system that depend on those tools to operate. So there's a big movement already in this distributed workforce. So here at Zendesk, we have over 150,000 businesses that use us as their central nervous system to operate on a day-to-day basis. So, those are pre-coronavirus numbers. I expect those to really take off. Again, a lot of attraction was already happening, but things like coronavirus, talking about it, really accelerating the trend there. And so some companies were already primed for it, were already ready for it. And then you have the companies that were on the sideline that were maybe have something like a distributed workforce or a work from home mindset in play. Now they're forced to kind of take action, and they have to either adopt the technology or they're going to risk really getting left behind. And that's part of the new normal as well. Companies that adopt cloud tools are going to be positioned very well to take advantage of really that kind of global economy and being able to service companies from everywhere. And another thing that people don't necessarily take into consideration is it's not just about bringing your workforce online and moving to a remote kind of atmosphere. When you use tools like Slack, like Zoom, like Zendesk, and others in this cloud working space, you're also ensuring your company against some risk. You're mitigating risk, right? You no longer have to worry about if there's a flood at the office, if there's a fire at the office. You don't have to worry about if someone's laptop is broken. You are protecting yourself by moving fully to the cloud. Of course, there are a new set of risks that come along with using these tools, but this is going to be the new normal, and companies should really consider it as a form of insurance, getting on board with these tools. And I certainly think it's going to be part of the working atmosphere worldwide post coronavirus as well.
Interesting thoughts actually you shared there. I would also like to quickly go to Oshada. I know you steered some really great initiatives within the public sector. Some of which was after coronavirus actually happened, going completely remote work, 100%. I think within 1 or 2 weeks, right? And so right now, how has the government and its agencies been responding to the current pandemic situation from a digital initiatives perspective?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I mean, what a lot of people don't see is that behind the scenes there's a lot of digitalization that's utilized. There's a lot of technology that was used in terms of creating this response. And I think all kudos should go to also the industry. I mean, there's been quite a few voluntary teams that we've set up already, delivering apps, delivering dashboards. For example, right now the contact tracing is completely done on a command center that is completely even on BI, right? And these are things that hasn't come out. I mean, no one has really harped about these things, but it's important to understand that the results that has come out, as much as it's been tremendous work from all the facets of different public services, the health sector. I think the interesting part is also that there's a lot of technology behind the scenes that's utilized across the board. And I think that's something that has been pivotal in terms of even Sri Lanka being just on the top 10 in terms of the efficacy of action towards getting the COVID minutes down, And then I think it's been across the board, I mean, I can talk about if you go right now to the Health Promotion Bureau website, I mean, it's just not just a traditional website. If you just click on the dashboard, you can get real-time data right now. And even Sri Lanka standing right now against even the performance of other countries. I mean, we've got right now, I mean, fingers crossed, I hope we continue to do that. There's 0 fatalities right now across the last couple of days, and you can see it against other countries as well, and how our fatal rates are performing against other countries. So I think there's been a tremendous surge and push, right, with the able support of the industry. And I think it's forced digitalization, isn't it? And I think we're on a good footing in terms of utilizing this time to actually get our digitalization roadmap going.
So I think based on the numbers of fatal rates and maybe the actual numbers, it's quite debatable.
Sure, topic off.
So maybe the numbers that you shared about fatal rates, I think that's something debatable, and it's a complete different debate. In terms of what you just shared, do you think something like coronavirus had to happen for you guys to do whatever that you did?
I think, I mean, certainly there, I think if you really look at the push this time around, it was for a smart nation. We are looking at a complete digitalized economy. But however, I should agree the fact that, look, the situation actually forced our hand in terms of accelerating certain initiatives. I mean, I can go on to other specifics. For example, now I've just got a requirement a couple of weeks back, as Ramesh mentioned, we are continue to have good problems. For example, from Jaffna, I get this response from quite a few organizations working from home, stating that the throughput is not sufficient, and we had to do some tweaks on the network with, again, the able support of operators. So I think it has certainly accelerated certain things that would have come down the line. But I see it as a positive, as even Lakshmini said, I mean, it's a, you got to draw positives of the situation, and I think we are in a very good footing in terms of setting the tone on the next steps as well. I mean, look, we are talking about 5G. We still have about 2,000 plus blind spots, which is still reliant on only 2G, and in even some areas that's not even 2G. So we've taken initiatives way before COVID-19, and I've taken initiatives of identifying these areas. I mean, we can talk about digitalization, but at the end of the day, everything banks on connectivity, right? And we got to get that piece right, and I think that's where we are right now. And I think certainly we're in a good footing.
And I think definitely we need to thank you, Oshada. I think you, as almost like a one-man army, you're doing a lot of good initiatives. So hats off to that to you. So let me go to Ruanti. You have held many digital corporate transformation roles in Sri Lanka, in corporates, in numerous industries. In your view, is the Sri Lankan corporate sector ready, maybe in more of a digital terms, to exploit the opportunities that this pandemic is presenting?
Yeah, Inosh, thank you. It's a good question, because when you look at corporates, for decades, every organization will come up with their IT budget, and this is the budget that is evaluated top down. You go into detail to really see whether that is the area that a company wants to really throw its dollars on, or is it building a new plant, or building another building, or is it opening a new venture. But when you look at IT as a separate unit, most of the institutions used to actually look at it separately. But in time to come, I've seen in Sri Lanka, it has become part of the business, it has become part of the strategy. And in the last few years, we've seen most companies investing on IT, because they have understood that the digital era is the era we are living in, and they have really looked at that form of investment. And therefore, I feel that the corporates have a digital roadmap. Most of the corporates have it. They have a digital strategy for implementation. And that, I think, has been reasonably the success of the companies being able to continue its business to some extent, even through the midst of this crisis. And if you take the new normal of how these businesses are operating, they're the only area I feel that there is a requirement to even further put your eyes into is the scalability of solutions. Because one is to be digital and to actually have a digital system. But then, are you truly digital if your ecosystem isn't digital? Are you truly digital if you haven't scaled to actually meet the demands that you're actually foreseeing, the kind of growth? Because everyone would think, okay, when I grow in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but suddenly this crisis has made certain businesses having to scale to the plans that they had envisioned maybe 10 years in the front, in their future, which is now at their doorstep. So whether the organizations have really scaled is one aspect, and whether the organizations have really checked for their vulnerabilities and threats. Because most of these digital projects end up with an implementation, and then do you really go back into checking your cybersecurity and those kind of areas, which are today the prevalent issue, right? This is the biggest concern that a corporate will today have, whether my systems are secure, because we are all connected, we are all on the internet, and whether my system is scalable. And if it's not scalable, how can you get your servers to the server room? So if you've done the cloud provisioning, then you've kind of moved on that road. So I think the organizations most have had their digital strategy and started working on this path, but certain questions on scalability, certain questions on whether the threat analysis and vulnerabilities have been truly assessed for us to be completely out of our office and work in the way we are doing is something that I think most businesses may not have fully gone into that depth on.
You also mentioned something interesting, that the ecosystem not being ready. So, I mean, when you look at ecosystem not being ready or the country is not ready, and we keep looking at this back and forth, is it like a chicken and egg thing that we're looking?
Yeah, like Lakmini said, when you work in providing a solution, you are working with a team, you're working with your customers and the ecosystem. So just because you or your organization is connected and have got all the tools to deliver a solution, if your customer is not ready to have a steering committee or a meeting over a conference call, if they're not ready to do, let's say, a testing using a remote connection, when they're used to having you next to them and telling them, press this and do that, it becomes difficult. So in terms of delivery of solutions and engagement, there are certainly issues that you will continue to see until the businesses also realize, look, I can't delay the implementation of this system for any longer. This solution is important for the success of my business and the survival of it. Therefore, they will come up with opening up and coming up with new methods of actually finally shaking hands and having that engagement. So yeah, the ecosystem, I think, is now we are in the wave 2. I can see that slowly people are embracing this new normal way of working and joining hands.
Okay, you also mentioned about upscaling. So I want to direct this question at Lakmini. So to talk about upscaling SaaS marketing during COVID-19, are we missing the opportunity of a lifetime if we don't capitalize right now?
Yeah, thanks, Enosh. I mean, that's really something we live with these days as Boatback, really, day in and day out. It's this, like I said, it's an overwhelming opportunity. I mean, honestly, it's an overwhelming opportunity. It might end in 2 months. I don't know, when all these, of course, the travel bans will be there for a while. So let's say 6 months. So if we don't take this opportunity as, companies in Sri Lanka or this part of the world, really, I think doing some injustice to ourselves. But again, it's not easy. I mean, it's easy to say, okay, I mean, even I get so many calls saying, why don't you do this or do that? And these ideas are great and these are very valid, but things have to be thought out because, you can't just throw money in a situation. Again, as I said, there's a long haul of, we need to be stable, right? And then we also don't know what the situation is completely. So we have to be cautious. But then again, we must take this. So we actually are doing that. There's a lot more marketing and online planning happening. I mean, day in and day out in this. So again, just like in a normal day, in a normal time, we have to prioritize. So we have to figure out the countries we'll be stronger in, etc. What kind of modes we're going to do. Because in the end, it's not just a fancy situation that we sort of put out all this marketing material. We have to get the sales back, right? Otherwise, we're not going to survive. So there is that. And I think we all know that there are some companies, specifically in the video conferencing market, that really zoomed up in terms of their numbers. So these possibilities are there. But again, we have to also look after the reputation and all that as well, because we have to look at it beyond that point as well. And especially, we are B2B, right? So business to business means they're very cautious, not like a retailer who will check something out, take a personal call on it. The IT managers have to take so much precaution, right? Because when they take us, they have to make sure that, they're doing it on behalf of the company. So it's not their personal risk. So it's a lot more, I guess, I'm talking from a B2B point, it's a little more difficult in terms of a quick decision. But we are doing a lot of things, and I do encourage other companies to do this. We're giving some free work, so they can try things out without, because if you have to buy the product, then you have to go through all the, the vulnerability testing, etc. But trying it out a little free, seeing if the experience is good, and then going for that is what we are sort of counting on. And we're doing a lot. I'm sure some of you may have seen some of those messages I've been sharing with friends and colleagues. So yeah, so as I said, I mean, it's a lifetime opportunity. We may never get this kind of opportunity, so we must try, but be cautious while trying. That's kind of my thing. Thanks.
Thank you. So welcome, Zulfa. Glad to have you here. I think we have some good questions for you coming up. But just being on the topic of Lakshmini, you brought this up in the previous question as well, and it's something interesting because other webinars also I hear these terms or statements a lot. Some of them being it's just a matter of market opening up for SaaS, or everyone wants to go digital. All technology companies are okay. These kind of statements are being thrown around. What, from your vantage point, do you consider these facts to be basically facts or myths? You're on mute, sorry. Lakshmini, hello?
The question was for me again?
Yes, sorry.
Oh, sorry. So he spoke to Zulfa, so I was waiting. Yes. So as I mentioned, I mean, every IT company being okay is pretty much a myth. As Ruanti and several of you also mentioned, we are definitely part of the ecosystem. It's kind of a supply chain. We are the provider, and there has to be someone on the other side ready to take it, ready to pay for it, ready to test it, and all that. So suddenly, for a short time, I mean, I think for IT, it will be a quick pickup because companies have to evolve. Companies cannot just be on lockdown forever. So even the people, even from work from home, they will get adapted, and we won't see the normal procurement, but definitely out of pure necessity, people, because social distancing simply will not go away for a little while until this vaccines and things come around, and that governments are probably comfortable to have complete, normality. So therefore, technology definitely is a need, especially productivity and the kind of things that we give for setting up remote meetings, that kind of thing. So yes, the myth is that everything is just completely okay for everybody. It is not that. But having said that, we are alive, we are operating. Our workforces are, thinking of creative new things. And as you, I mean, we all know Pickme. Pickme was doing taxis, and now they are the biggest in delivering all sorts of things to people. So we're changing what we do as well, in a sense. So so there's that, Enosh. I hope that answers that question. And I just have to also mention specifically, this thought came to me because we heard that some of the banks had basically listed out industries. So central bank said industries like IT are included for support. It's one of the key export areas that we should support. And then some of the banks basically had this myth that there's only e-commerce that is affected. Everybody else possibly is okay because nobody seemed to be openly complaining. So that kind of thing, I'd really like to make sure that if anyone is from banks in this audience, to carry that message home, because they're not just simply okay. We need some time. We are working, so we need some time to make sure our clients start working properly and start these orders again. So we really don't want this industry to collapse because it's one of the best industries. But having said that, it's in stages, right? So even just to mention, even computer hardware, you think that, you see on internet that computer hardware is probably going to be sold the best because everyone's buying new laptops to do work from home. But the logistics of it, Enosh, I mean, it's not as if suddenly you're going to get all these orders, right? And who's going to pay for it? The companies don't even have people at office to pay for it. So there is we need a little help and time. And I think the government is really looking at this. I see a lot of efforts on that. So that's encouraging. So just wanted to share that message.
Yeah, I mean that's actually good because since we actually spoke about about how it's impacting industries, I would like to ask Imran, from your analysis so far, can you give some examples of clear winners and losers out of this pandemic situation?
Yeah, before that, I just wanted to do a couple of things. One is to allude to the point of what Lakshmi spoke, because I saw one of my friends, Rohan, who is my batchmate actually from school, but he was there. But I also heard this from a couple of other players. Look, digital marketing is one of the most promising industries for Sri Lanka, because you can work from this country and service customers around the world. And I know a guy in Badulla who owns a couple of I think he owns some of the most luxurious vehicles you can think of, right? Purely paid by cash, right? And then that's because he's in that in the industry that pays. But there are issues in terms of cash flow for that kind of business, right? Because their clients are also traditional industries who have a cash flow, not necessarily a cash flow problem, but an approval problem, right? Because they still deal with checks. Sorry, Lakshmi, but they do deal with check. And there's a guy who's supposed to sign the check is not there, and they are in a bit of a crunch, because I know at least 2 to 3 digital marketing companies that are in trouble in Sri Lanka, who have amazing invoices that will be honored. Right? They have A-grade clients from different parts of the world. Definitely, they're going to get honored. Just that they have a short-term cash flow problem, and the banks are not coming on board, because for banks, they're looking at collateral-based lending, right? And what is the point of having any land or property, because you can't liquidate it in this market? So those companies are going to come back very quickly, and something that the government and stakeholders need to look at that. I just want to mention that winners, obviously, people like Joshua and Zoom and Zendesk and all the home working working companies are doing amazing. If you look at their share prices, you can see that is there. Whether it will last, definitely something that we need to examine. I think there will be some return to normalcy, because humans they crave interaction, right? So there's going to be some sort of interaction, but there's going to be an opportunity in terms of exactly, yes. Rohan is talking about banks are paying lip service. Absolutely correct, because right they don't understand the changing nature of the industry, and that's a problem. Coming back to the industry that I'm going to take off. Look, healthcare is taking off, but healthcare does not necessarily mean pharmaceutical companies. Slimtech, the Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology, whom one of my batchmates are, is operating up. They're doing amazing things. Overnight, they're coming up with new swabs for testing COVID, right? So healthcare is a definite winner in the medium to long term, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is, healthcare company that will succeed. Education, I know that there are many platforms. I have connected Sri Lankan tutors, right, to clients overseas who want their kids tutored by the best in terms of basic education, maths, English. And there are people who are coming up with platform. CurveUp is one platform that they're using. They've been building it for the last few months. So you can't suddenly come into the market in this market and come up with because there is a lot of pre-selection that is working. That is why established players are going to do well, right? Even Lakshmi is alluding to the fact. So even though those new platforms are coming up, parents or universities or whatever that does those evaluations are going to take some time to do it. So you should have been developing your product a lot earlier. The biggest winners in this is Chinese e-commerce players, right? And they have succeeded in feeding a city of 11 million people, Wuhan, for 60 days of, right? And they have done that because they failed the first time, right? So through SARS in 2003, 17 years ago, they failed. Right? And because they failed, they learned the lessons from those, from that experience. They've invested in drone technology so that you can have, food drop for the remotest part of China. You have, driverless vehicles that are going through cities in China that could even be trialed here. So I think there is a lot of the winners are people who are able to connect existing industries virtually. Right? Those are going to be the winners in the short term. In the long term, I just want to add some point. So many clients are coming worried, right? In the long term, every industry can be affected. Every industry, whether it is tea, whether it is, Ramesh's JKH, whether it is, there isn't a single industry that cannot win, provided they make smart decisions on digital. And smart decisions on digital is not about throwing money at technologies or money at hardware. It's about a mindset change. And that I have not seen in CEOs or boards, even after this.
That's actually very, very interesting. Since you also mentioned about corporates, let's actually dive into a corporate perspective. So this is directed at Ramesh. So, I mean, in normal times, it's extremely difficult to get buy-in from stakeholders for maybe expensive digital initiatives with maybe low customer take-up. And I think that was one of the, maybe I think we can take the e-commerce part itself, where up to now there was only about 100 to 150, and then suddenly it just, blew up. But those digital initiatives become critical in situations like this and related events like this. How can CIOs convince boards to make tech investments? Considering also like normal.
Yeah, I think a couple of pointers there. I think if you look at John Kiss as a group, always have been ahead of the curve in investing in technology, right? So to speak, if you look at we were earlier on in 2012, we adopted O365. By 2015, most of our 5,000 employees with an access to internet and a mobile phone could work from home, right? Because the employee-centric applications were accessible. So when COVID hit us, we seamlessly transitioned into work from home without many challenges, right? Because we had Teams, we had O365, a lot of our 70% of our payload was running out of Azure Cloud. So all of those were well and fine, and board was very much endorsed all the investments in tech. So if you take retail, for example, I think we had already released an RFP 3 months back for a commerce platform, right? COVID beat us to the whole strategy, right? But what really came out of this whole thing was that just rewind 1 month, we just had 100 orders a day, right? And all of a sudden, people were clamoring to go online. So obviously, we kept up to the challenge, and we scaled up in the last 3 weeks to now we're taking about 5,000 orders a day, and we are well afoot in terms of pursuing our strategy in terms of going to an omni-channel commerce platform, because we feel the new normal is going to be online, right? Obviously, as you said, were we disrupted? Yes, in a way, but the disruption is something that we foresaw, which will come, but it got fast-tracked, right? So I think that is the ideology that we need to have as leaders, is look at can we extrapolate the dots and connect the dots into the future, not backwards, right? Like what Steve Jobs said, right? So if we are able to kind of predict what is going to hit us, it's a matter of time, right? COVID actually accelerated a lot of that kind of adoption curve, right? So that is what we need to realize, that invariably it would have happened, but COVID fast-tracked a lot of these adoption curves, tech adoption, and I think in sarcasm people said COVID is the new chief digital officer, which is true, right? Because people are looking at tech in a different perspective, which they did not see it before, right? It is forcing people to come to terms with tech. That is inevitable. It's a means to an end. It's not an end in itself, right? So I think that is forcing people to do a lot of stuff. So I saw a lot of questions about Keelsup also on the side track on the Q&A, whether online is going to stay forever. Is the supermarket going to get disrupted? Yes, it will. I am sure that a lot of people who have migrated online are going to stay online. May not go back to the stores, right? Obviously, the store formats will change. Now, even we at John Case are discussing good office format change. How many people of our employees would come back to offices and need to come back to offices? How many people could continue working from home? I know Sharanya has raised some questions about, are we looking at balancing working mothers? Have we looked at the social impact of working from home? May not in complete sense. This is obviously going to unravel a lot of unanswered questions that we need to answer as a community and as leaders, right? So this is obviously going to unsettle a lot of equations, and we got to define new equations going forward.
Interrupt on that thought process. Supermarket chains have been investing on.
Sorry, we can't hear you. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so Ramesh, I think for decades, supermarket chains have been investing heavily on physical assets and purely targeting on footfall. traffic to the supermarkets. And right now, even the notion of people ordering online can be taken as there is no other option, and because of that we're ordering online. So for you to have a very strong sense of that online is going to stay, how do you arrive at that? Right? What perception do you have there?
I don't know how many of you know that we started online actually as early as in 2003 or 2004, and we launched our first mobile app for Kill Super in 2011, right? But unfortunately, the adoption wasn't there, right? So we had to kind of tone certain things down because we felt people aren't inclined that way. And obviously, as you said, a lot of people said, if I'm buying vegetables and groceries, I would want to touch it, smell it, feel it. I don't want to buy online. But today, the entire thought process changed, and people are comfortable with it, right? Because as long as it's delivered in a hygiene way and people are comfortable that they're getting good stuff, I don't think people don't have comments about ordering online, right? And today, if you look at the demographics of people who are going online, are the people who are probably around the mid-age group and even senior citizens, right? Because they don't have any other options. Given that they have got used to this, I feel that new normal will define this as the major trend, right? Because people have got used to it and they never tasted it before. This is like what happened in India with demonetization, right? Cash went out of the system. No one thought that will happen. They were forced to. Paytm became the new normal, right? So here, I think in most cases, online is going to become the new normal, whether we like it or not.
I would actually like to go into a startup perspective now. Zulfa?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
Hi. So this is a maybe a heavy question coming on to you at the very first one itself. So since we are on this topic right now, and also investors buying into certain ideas, how has your board of directors and investors reacted to the actions that you all took at the crisis, and what lessons can maybe directors and investors can learn from it, other directors and investors?
I think there's a lot to learn, right? So I think let's start off with entrepreneurs. And I'm sure there's a lot of entrepreneurs here in the panel. I think the initiative first we took, obviously, is to protect the company, right? We wanted to make sure the company exists, right? So as PICME, obviously we were we were essentially in the world. We were doing really well. That just disappeared, right? I went down by 99%. We're only just doing 1% of what we should be doing. But obviously, as a company, obviously with the staff, we pivoted really fast and we pivoted into the delivery world. Yes, we had the technology already in place, but today, now we are looking at revenue opportunities in the delivery world. But again, the most important thing to entrepreneurs and small businesses and essentially large businesses is ensuring that the company still exists. And I think every management will have to make a decision on what do we need to do to protect the company. Happen across large companies, and I think the small companies, obviously, it's not known. We'll have to make those calls. But then I think it's also important to manage your stakeholders, your investors, right? And that's key because now investors have put money in businesses, right? And you want to look at their interests as well. And that's part of it, right? You have to make sure the company runs, and in situations like this, you have to make hard decisions to ensure that the business still exists. Because if you can pass through this stage, right? One, you're a very resilient company, right? And investors want to invest in you, right? And then you move on, right? Because if you jump, I think this month is going to be challenging. The month is also going to be challenging, right? And as you cross those 2 months, you become a much more resilient company. And from there, I think investors would love to invest in businesses like that can survive this wave.
Right. Okay. Since you're in the logistics, I would want to go back to Ruanti and pose this question at Ruanti. Many experts have said that logistics sector would be one of the key sectors that are going to play a major role across the world for the economic revival. So you have extensive experience in the logistics setup. How is logistics sector digitizing its activities?
Yeah, now if you take the logistics industry, and if you think back a bit, as early as in 1970, you would see people started to do EDI transmissions and transmission notices to give notices when jobs are picked up, when they are delivered, and the supply chain within the logistic industry from the time you pick up goods to delivery. Uh, Between the vendor and the customer, there has been a lot of EDI connectivity and EDI communications that have taken place, and this has become, I can say, a platform under which the supply chain has got built upon. And this has also given birth to having a completely cloud environment, because this is so much service driven, connecting all the parties globally. So you have now interfaces to connect to the customs. In most of the countries, the customs have digitized themselves so that from your ERP itself, you can submit your declaration documents. You can get your clearance done before the parcel arrives in US. So to that degree, people have gone into ensuring that the process is seamless, right? In addition, the industry has also opened ways to give additional discounts if you are not using paper, like for example, e-airway bills. So the industry itself has focused on supply chain, which is truly digital. And I think most of the logistics companies today would not be able to really survive if they haven't embraced that just as a business criticality. Now we are in the midst of the COVID crisis. This, I think, has become a very easy game for the supply chain and the forwarders, because all are connected. But just as much as the supply chain has always boomed with the e-commerce, with the economy growing, the globalization, all of that, whenever the business has hit a downturn, like even in the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, even today, you will feel that the businesses are going to have a problem, because again, they're dependent on the suppliers and the customers to order, and for the economy to continue. So when the economy is at a downturn, again, the logistics and the service providers are going to have an issue. But I would think that they are going to play a pivotal role in the cargo transmission of healthcare goods, in the transmission of food and delivery. So this is going to become the most critical part of how they are going to deliver it. And in Sri Lanka, I think there has to be a lot of thought given to how, when goods arrive in our ports, how they're going to be cleared and how they can be dispatched out. And I think all parties involved in this ecosystem of clearing and delivering needs to really put a lot of effort into enabling this process, because a lot of people are dependent on the goods. So there has to be a method, because if you take Katunayaka, for example, is not in the Colombo district, and now you cannot cross the border. So that itself puts you in a constrained situation. So if you really think about how you can make this seamless, I think the country needs to understand the movement of the goods, the importance of it, and give some form of uh, help to this industry for it to sustain and actually give the goods delivery out of the port and out of the arrival terminals into the into the right party's hands. So I think it is playing a pivotal role in Asia.
You gave some really good insights there. So I want to, looking at this situation, I want to slightly zoom out and then come back to Joshua. So Joshua, I think scaling fast for remote teams in a remote working environment can be challenging when it's like suddenly triggered out of a pandemic situation like this. How can we prepare to scale quickly under difficult circumstances like this? And maybe also on a normal sense, how can we scale up?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very important question. There's some really key considerations you have to make, and there, of course, there's a technology side of it. But I think the best advice I can give here is, focus on the essentials. And so, just to give some background, here in Canada, what we've done is we've divided things into categories of essential and non-essential. So if you have a business and your business is marked as essential and you have a storefront, you can stay open. If you are non-essential, you have to close. So that theme of essential and non-essential, it's starting to cascade down. And so what you see are businesses determining what is essential spend, what is non-essential spend. you have customers that's deciding what are essential activities we can do, what is essential spend in the same way. And so spending is starting to contract for a lot of these people. Now, coming back to your question here, you have to have a good foundation before you move your company forward if you want to do any sort of drastic change. And so when it comes to the essentials, you should ask yourself, does your organization have a sense of trust? Do your employees feel like their leaders are transparent? Do employees have a meaningful sense of work, sense of community, a work-life balance? If there are holes anywhere there, when you make that transition into any change, those are going to get exemplified. You have people where you no longer have oversight of your employees when you move over to a remote world and you're starting to scale in a digital sense. And so, if your employees don't have comfort in reaching out to you, then that you're going to have a bigger problem when you move digital and you have no actual vision onto them and things of that nature. And so, again, focus on the essentials is my key piece of advice here.
Yeah, sorry.
What was that?
Yeah, just to interrupt you there, I mean, what you were saying was, in terms of going remote work, most of the things that you actually mentioned right now related to human nature and philosophies of trust and community. And so what you're saying is like technology, there's something beyond technology when we are looking at something like remote work.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this whole thing is beyond technology, and technology is just supporting the change. But one reason why companies in say North America have been able to move to these remote workforces is because we have these very strong work cultures where people feel like they work at their families, right? They associate work with their families, very strong communities, very strong trust. And so, again, it is a very human thing that we have to take into consideration. When you move online, you need to really have behind the scenes that strong foundation before you move a company forward.
Okay, so maybe zooming out even further, I wanna come to Oshad right now. I have to slightly challenge your representation here. I think.
Go for it.
I hope I don't get white man later. So I think intention is far different from action, and I think the government has a lot of good intentions. And we have also seen this in the past that they put out so many good proposals and reports on what exactly that they are intending to do, but we seldom see certain things coming to life. So I think from that perspective, what are the long-term initiatives in terms of digitization of government services that you see to make public services more virtual and bring it closer to the people? And maybe even how are these progressing if you're making any efforts right now?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question again. I think to answer your question, the first piece of the question, I think the intent has been very clear in terms of the priority that's given to digitalization of the country by the fact that the tax concessions and all that has been basically conveyed onto the IT industry. I think that has been a major enabler in terms of getting the IT industry boosted up and on call to basically get into a hyper growth cycle. But coming back to the public sector and how well geared it should be, I think it's imperative. I think as much as we are looking at new business, I think, as I always say, organizations in the private sector has to look at the third horizon of strategy, that is creating new business model now. As much as the organizations from a private perspective are moving on to new business models, I think it's imperative that the public sector keeps pace. It's very important, and I think, and I can't stress this as much as I want to. I think it's very important that the public sector doesn't become a bottleneck, and to do that, I think we have to also get on the bandwagon of digitalization. I'll give you an example from a TRC's perspective. Now we have a lot of IoT enablements and technologies coming in, and there are a lot of archaic approvals that is required and all that. That is not the case. I mean, if you take the latest cars coming in, the latest radar controlled collision avoidance systems, I mean, they all use spectrum. I mean, for example, we've just been having discussions and saying, hey, look, we've got to basically streamline this because it's a good thing to enable these functions, and it shouldn't be. I don't think the government or the public sector should be having restrictions in cutting down the requirements. I mean, that's what we've done. And for example, we've had this new initiative where new startups can come onto the TRC, for example, and get approvals in one day for IoT, low-powered IoT devices, for example, the drones and all of that. So there have been certain processes that we've been gearing up. Having said that, again, I mean, it's not sufficient to just stick on that, I mean, as much as we talk about this, there's a lot more initiatives we have to take on. Traditional workplaces would have to be shifted to digital workflows, and that's something we are also doing. And I think ICTA is also doing a tremendous job in that case. I mean, if you look at the meet.gov initiative, it's an open source platform called Jitsi, and it's enabling quite a lot of organizations to get their services ramped up online. Now, the likes of us have gone one step forward in terms of getting the enterprise content management systems in sync and all of that. But I think it's a step on. Digitalization is a long roadmap. And as I always say, it's been very real. I mean, this time around, the President's initiative and the vision has been very real. And when you talk about the digital economy, I mean, we are talking about a cross-cut of industries that needs automation. I think Imran mentioned healthcare. I mean, these are things that we need to look at. There are scenarios like HIPAA and all of that coming in for electronic medical records. What do we have, right? I mean, in this sort of an instance, right, where social distancing is the norm, where are our records, right? Is stuck up on some GP's location, for example, right? We are looking at agri-technology. It's about yield management. It's not about quantity anymore. It's about qualitative aspects. So, I mean, there's a lot of the drone technology. I mean, Israel, if you take it, it's example. Estonia is 99% digitized, except the marriage and the birth certifications. Everything else is digitalized, and the land, right? I mean, it's 99% there. And then these are not things that they've built overnight, I mean, it's just been a concerted effort. So from our perspective, I mean, things have been going on. I mean, it's as I always said again, COVID-19 has been a positive enabler in terms of digitalization. It's forced digitalization, and I think it's important that we bring in those synergies from the public sector towards the drives of the private sector as well. So I think that's happening, and it's very real. And then there's a lot of questions asked about online buying, and I don't believe it's going to just stop at the e-commerce front. I mean, right now we are logging on to a website like Ramesh and the team is doing a grand job in terms of kills. I've been ordering for the 4th time, brilliant job. Queuing has been they've got the queuing going from yesterday, brilliant. But the next step is also on there, right? What about the IoT front? Can I basically book it through my Amazon Echo or my Google Home, for example? I should be able to just do a voice command, for example. And this will be really I mean, Sri Lanka is going to get up to that point. And as much as we think that e-commerce enablement is the next in thing, it's not, right? Trust me, take another 6 to 1 year. There's going to be local startups that's going to be working on Open Hub and bringing on the home automation, where we'll be just speaking to Google Home or the Amazon Alexa and basically ordering. I think that's the vision we have, and I think it's moving on in a very aggressive manner. I can assure you that much.
And really appreciate that, Oshad. I think we need more enterprising initiatives like that. So I think we looked at from a larger perspective. I think maybe looking at more of, maybe looking back at maybe the entire digitalization process, I probably would like to ask this from Ruwanti. Where do we most often fail in digital transformation initiatives launched by Sri Lankan corporates? And what do we have to do right?
Okay. Yeah, if you look back, I mean, let's look at some of the pluses, right? If you look some of the, before we go to challenges, okay, the pluses are that today we have the corporates really understanding the need and wanting to grow their businesses, and they want to be on the digital transformation journey. They want to be on this bandwagon, and they want to do a transformation in the organization. But the challenges that I think all the companies do end up is the shift of how we work. Has that been understood when the management really wants to embrace transformation? And that shift causes a lot of issues in terms of how we would be continuing to work, and then you end up scaling down without actually meeting the true transformation needs, and you end up having just a system that has completely transformed maybe a piece of paper into the same way that you do business. So without understanding the shift that you have to take, the shift of understanding a best practice and the shift of actually moving on an ecosystem where you are connected. So you have to understand all the features that come with it and the change that a person needs to go through. So you end up having so many people talking to you and say, no, this is not how I did it, this is how I have been doing it. And the minute you talk about digital transformation, people expect that same process to be now implemented in the new system, which is, I think, one of the biggest hurdles and some of the limiting factors why some of the transformation projects fail, some of the transformation projects take a longer time to actually go forward. And today, the transformation projects are not only just about embracing the practices and the new ways of working, but it's also about the amount of RPA that you can put in so that you can automate that process, the amount of workflows that you can plug in to make that process more seamless. And apart from just having a system in, and that is, I think, for an organization, not just a solution, but it is a journey. And the companies that have thought this as a journey and taken it step by step, I think are going to be the winners in this.
Thank you so much, Rohanti. I think we are about 15 minutes overboard and we need to dive into the questions. So let me take one question quickly. So this is for Ramesh. This is from Adil Ahmed. Hi, Ramesh, you mentioned about companies and people adapting to digital due to that to step in. But when we return to normalcy at one point, how many would really keep it afloat, pushing further? Okay, so basically the question is, once we are back to normal, what percentage do you think would stick around for online, if I'm correct? Ramesh,
Yeah, I think I answered that. I think on the chat. So I think it's anybody's guess, right? So because the general trend towards online is going to grow, right? So I think if I speak for John Case and Keel Super, we are confident about online and we are going to invest into the channel, and we feel like Oshad mentioned, it's going to be a journey, right? It's going to be a transformation journey where users are going to adapt, users are going to obviously raise the bar, right? So people are going to obviously demand being able to order through Google Home, because we were one of the first to kind of launch smart homes with Trizen, right? We had Google Home, all of that as part of it. So it's not far away that a consumer, advanced consumer, is going to demand that from us. And today's commerce platform offers that. But the question is, at what scale, at what kind of trusted do we want to push that? Depends on the market demand, right? So like I said, we were able to kind of scale in the 3 weeks to the need. May not be the ideal way, but what I'm saying is, obviously we got to keep pace with the technology. We got to keep pace with what's happening around the world. It's a matter of time before Sri Lanka catches up to that, right? So we got to be awake to that opportunity and to that idea, and not shut ourselves saying that brick and mortar is the only thing which is going to survive.
I would post this for Imran. So this is a question from Sharanya Sekram. So she's saying, would love to hear your thoughts on supporting or exploring this. So what she's saying is, Facebook has announced they will be giving all their employees exceeds expectation performance review for the first half of 2020 to reflect the challenges that they are dealing with as employees. So maybe your thoughts on that, Imran?
Look, in terms of working from home, it's a matter of also utilizing. There's a different aspect to look at it, right? Number one is, I just saw a comment from somebody about 45% of the workforce cannot work from home. Particularly in the state sector, there are some concerns of how many people can actually have even official email accounts and stuff like that. I think that they will address that. But I think the key parameters to understand is how much of your task can be suited to work from home, and you will find that to a large extent you can change a lot of the job descriptions and so on, but that's a long-term process. You cannot do it overnight in an emergency, right? That's number one to remember. Number two is about other enabling laws. Now, I know that my good friend Jan Fernando from ICTA, who is doing a fantastic job over the last few years, I've collaborated with him for a decade. I know that he is going around, advising people that Professor Gihanda is from Cert as well, right? Look, and domain registry. Look, we have the laws that permit you to sign documents, right? Electronic signatures are available. But I think a lot of people are not aware of it, and they're scared to kind of utilize it. And that is completely, something that needs to be addressed. And they are, the webinars that they're doing are oversubscribed multiple times, which is a very, very good thing. I watched the first one, and there's another one coming up as well. So I think there's an awareness gap as well about what we can and cannot do from home. And I know that we were one of the best. We have some of the best e-laws in this part of the world for sure, definitely globally, thanks to the work of people like Jayanta from ICTA. They have seen this 14 years ago, right? That's a long time in terms of being ahead and having the enabling infrastructure. Now it's about courage of employers trusting the workforce. This is where the big problem is, right? So I know a billionaire Sri Lankan businessman who's gone and got a lot of publicity for going around giving ventilators, but first few days of the lockdown, it says to the staff, COVID, come to work, right? So there is an issue of trust that needs to happen in terms of corporate board members, and I think that's where the ultimate issue is in terms of how much it'll take off. But one thing that I have been a very big proponent of, two things, right? One is using the Sri Lankan diaspora. If they don't want to physically come back, they can contribute to the economic growth of the country. This is going to permit them because they have a lot of time on their hands. Number two is about also utilizing women, particularly mothers returning to work after having kids, particularly even in industries like the IT BPM industry. We have a lot of talented people who don't really return to work, at least in the first few years after motherhood, simply because the workforce is not very flexible in terms of utilizing their resources. So I think using a diaspora, now I know that Oshida and ICTA have been doing this portal to get Sri Lankans registered, right? And we have about 59,000 people registered as of now. I did somewhere. And the concept paper for this, 3-4 years back, I made a concept paper that we sent to ICT and also to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, because I was at a panel discussion we looked at. So I think the information you get for this particular purpose of helping the country for COVID or whatever, can also be utilized in kind of utilizing the resources of Sri Lankan expatriates overseas as well. So it's about how much of a job role can lend itself to be done at home. And I think that's a mapping that our HR departments need to do. And I honestly don't know whether we have the resources to do that mapping. And I think we need to scale up on that mapping very, very fast.
Right. Thanks, Imran. So there's another question. So this is for Lakmini. Is it a good time to call your potential clients who did not adopt the platform maybe previously and express your services to them again? And will they use it post COVID-19?
Well, yes, of course, we are doing it. So there's lots of parties that have not taken board pack in various markets. Of course, I'm really proud to say that Sri Lanka was one of the countries that had great adoption. Pretty much all the banks have governance digital, and they had it early. So in comparison to even some of the US companies, which we are still automating, Sri Lanka is pretty much, has a high percentage of digital governance. So that's a great thing from a ranking point. So yes, so the answer is, yeah, we are going around doing that. We are also going and reaching out, as I mentioned, doing campaigns to people we've never thought of doing. Because right now everyone's at home, they're responding. Actually, the response to emails that we send out is a lot more, maybe 5 times more on average. So yes, the answer is there's a lot of potential on online for countries like us which have products. We should really reach out. Yeah. Thanks, Lakmini.
So there is actually a lot of questions, so I'm trying to take so that we can disperse it among evenly among our panelists. So the next one is for Ruanti. After COVID-19, I think that most of the companies are going to build systems online and maintain their services with the remote locations. By changing this mindset into this, I think most of the IT companies are getting into a lot of projects and IT jobs are growing. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think with the emergence of COVID, new forms of businesses have come up, and if you really think about it, most companies are going to now actually think about looking at your portfolio and doing that kind of prioritization as to what are the kinds of solutions that are going to be deliverable and which are going to add value in this current circumstance. So as a result, yes, businesses are going to want more systems, and that is going to, of course, the industry is going to grow because of that. But how fast will our customers actually make a decision and select a party? Are they going to be willing for the remote connectivity in Sri Lanka and without visiting the office and making a presentation the traditional way? Will customers be ready for a remote presentation, a slide deck, and then a sign up? Even with the digital signatures, all that in place, still we have customers who may prefer to have a written sign off on certain documents, and they would still want to sometimes wait till this situation is over. If you look at providing new solutions, you may want to conduct training sessions. Our customers need to be agile enough to change to accept maybe a remote training program. So for the industry to grow, our customers need to start walking and talking the same digital conversation with us. And I think once that happens, we should, and that I would call is our stabilization phase. And once that stabilization takes place, then I would see the industry is going to actually boom up with lots of new ideas. And those who are able to deliver fast are going to be able to be ahead of the curve.
Thank you, Rohanti. There is a lot of questions, and I think the discussion feels like we are not even half done. But unfortunately, I think we have only about 5 to 10 minutes. So let's maybe take extra 5 minutes only. So this question is for Zulfa. It's a 3-part question. So Zulfa, I'll read out the question. Many people who have used Uber before the pandemic have changed to Pick Me during this pandemic, and they have really enjoyed the service and build a trust among individuals. So question is, how quickly you all planned and adopted the situation? Number 1. Number 2 is, have you all got any users signed up through this pandemic? Number 3 is, Pick Me needs to talk a lot today about this operation in the pandemic because it will be
surely. I think we obviously had a lot of strength being the local company, and I think everyone needs to identify that as an important piece in the jigsaw, right? I think what I want to sort of leave behind is, when this whole thing started last month, it's been a month, right? Right? We were all worried about whether we'll have food to eat, right? Whether we will have water to drink, the basic things, right? And we are fortunate we have agriculture in place. We have vegetables coming in, right? And then obviously, I think the question was, are we self-sufficient? I think that's the important thing, right? As a country, we need to be self-sufficient. In technology also, we need to be self-sufficient, right? And that's the most important thing, right? And I think the people out there should appreciate that there are companies out here that raise to the occasion. That being said, we as a company, we're fortunate. We have a fantastic team. We are about 350 people as a company. We were able to pivot very fast, right? And that's obviously, and all doing in their bedrooms, right? Or in their houses, right? And they were fantastic. At one point, I think we were running the country's transportation, right? We moved 4,000 tourists to the airport with the tourist board, right? So that's the magnitude of the operation we were running through our platform. And I think that's something that I think the government organizations, the other stakeholders should recognize. We were the point of contact because we knew all our drivers. Because our drivers were all over the island, right? And we could just, as a matter of, with a call, we can tell them, hey, you know what? There is a tourist in Arugambe. He needs to be moved to the airport, and it could only be done by a platform like ours. And we were fortunate. I mean, we took that advantage, and we were able to serve the people of our country. right? We not only moved tourists, we moved people, important people. Then obviously we got involved with the supply chain, right? Getting vegetables across from Damula to Colombo, and then from there, from the merchants, we got it to your homes. We've touched over 100,000 homes already, right? And that's the operation we ran, right? And I'm actually very fortunate that the team that could run that kind of operation. Obviously, we pivoted very well, and I think another important thing is we need to build an attitude that we can do it as Sri Lankans, right? We're fortunate enough, we have free education, and our education system is good. It can go further. We have universities that are sick, right? Obviously, we have talent in the country, right? We need to know how to preserve it. Now, obviously, we are not going to go overseas anymore, but at least, we need to create opportunity for them. And as a company, I'm proud of everyone in the company, and I'm proud of as a Sri Lankan company to be able to raise to the occasion. And I think we can do more, right? I think we can do more. I think the other stakeholders needs to identify this, recognize this, and be able to support just not us, but also the local companies that are trying to make a difference in this whole ecosystem.
And Zulfa, I think more than the business operations that you did behind the scenes, which almost was like a gigantic task, I think the intention to do good was vibrating, and I think we as Sri Lankans felt it. So hats off to that, because you guys as a startup did really amazing. So there is a lot of private requests that we need to extend this a little bit more. I think so too. It's an amazing panel. So probably let's probably go till about 7:15. I don't think it's right by others to extend it beyond that. Let's go till about 7:15. And please for the participants, please stay around, because I think there's some good questions on the Q&A section. Zulfa, I just want to maybe take this question with you as well. Arita Vikramanayaka from Nithya Partners, I think at a webinar 1 or 2 days back, he told something really interesting. What he said was that at the end of this pandemic, everybody will be a startup. What he meant was, like, pretty much everybody is going to either change their mentality or they have to become a startup. So what advice would you as a startup give to founders and corporates hoping to either pivot or start their own ventures, or maybe even raise fund?
Yeah, I think so. I think all the large companies would have to look at it as a startup altogether, because the equation has changed now, right? Physical presence or physical offices are of no use anymore, or I mean, at least till we come out of this. It's going to be a change, and in fact, I also don't know how things are going to play out in the next 2-3 months. But I think it's the way how you look at it. I think if you have a positive frame of mind, you can essentially take advantage of this situation. I think for startups, I think it's certainly an opportunity, right? I mean, if you are involved in the hotel, you have a problem, but you need to know how to pivot. I've seen some companies that have pivot very well, and I think you should be able to identify what other opportunities open up and essentially be able to play along with that. Obviously, valuations will depend on how in what business you are, right? I think, for example, I mean, you look at what Amazon has done in the last 2 weeks. They are today a $1.2 trillion company, right? So anyone in the supply chain is going to benefit a lot, as Ruanti mentioned. I think so. The investment money will be there. I think I'm sure the investment money will be there. It's just a matter of how do you present your business to investors and potential stakeholders. So I think that's how you need to position yourself as startups. As startups.
Thanks, Zulfa. So we'll take another question. That is, this is I think Oshada can take this. So Kumar Lopez is asking, any thoughts on extreme digitization and privacy? Do you think we will go into a reverse cycle? Your thoughts, Oshada?
Yeah, so I think more than extreme digitalization, I think it's going to be pretty much hyper digitalization or hyper growth cycle that is preempted right now with the situation. Also, in terms of privacy, look, there are certain pieces of legislation that has to come into play. that the Data Privacy Act is going to come into play, right? I mean, it's at the final stage of draft, so it's going to be enacted definitely. And I think that's an area certainly we have to also be very well aware of as much as we are driving through digitalization, because personal privacy is paramount. Right now, that's one example where TRC said about 3-4 months back, I took the precedent of ensuring that no unsolicited messages could even go out, as much as it was being abused. But it's just a very, very minute step, right? I mean, we have to delve on to certain next stages. How is corporates or entities going to consume your data, and how are they going to use that, right? There's a prime purpose that they collect our data, and it's got to be ensured. It's like, for example, PCI compliance for credit card details. But however, when you go one step further right now, in terms of, I mean, there's a lot of companies that's converging right now. I'll give you an example. There's a lot of mergers and acquisitions coming into play. So what right does an organization have on a M&A to divulge that information to another entity, you know, that arm's length scenarios coming into play. So I think there's a lot of macro level frameworks that has to keep on moving forward. There are pieces of legislation coming in. We have the Electronic Data Act that has enabled us to do digital transactions, for example, that has been enacted in 1996. But we have to move on. You know, the Data Privacy Act has to come in. The Cybercrime Act is already there. It has to basically upgrade. But these are happening right now. You know, that's the main point. It is happening right now, and it is on an accelerated mode. And then you also be able to see it in the next couple of months once things settle down.
Right. So there is another question. So this I'll talk it at Imran. This is an open question to the panel. So I think Imran is more suited to take this. I would like to know organizations involved in the community development NGO, how they would face digitalization, since the objective is to go to the needy people and fulfill the basic needs of these people who are in need. So basically digitalization for NGOs and
yeah, I think the drive for digitalization for NGOs has been going on for a long time, simply because there is a lack of money, right? So money in terms of social welfare has got concentrated. So you have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that has $1 billion, but the other funders, the short to medium term funders, are declining every day. So there's a polarization there, right? So whoever is putting any money, they want to see, they want to see results. They also want to see impact. And that is where you're going to see a lot of digitization coming in, right? So for example, I'll give you a good example. One of the apps that have been going around is in Sri Lanka is Thuru. Hasanka and my good friend Heminder, right? Now Thuru lets you roughly, look at tracking and stuff like that in terms of the trees that they've planted. So now I was talking to Hasanka the other day, and I have a client for them. So there's a gentleman in Australia that is looking to kind of offset the carbon emissions from well, now there are not many airlines flying, but they will be back, right? From the bigger airlines, right? Airlines emit a lot of carbon emissions. So he was looking for a place where he could look at offsets that can be tracked, right? So the individual passenger should be able to see where perhaps one or more trees or carbon dioxide or whatever that is getting offset, that he or she is flying on Qantas or Virgin if it survives, right? And they are saying, hey, we're doing carbon offsets in Sri Lanka, and they want to see, okay, where is where is the exact tree that my ticket is paying for, or the kind of offset or how many CO2 and So that is the kind of transparency that the donors are requiring. So I think digitization is making sure that there is there's a bang for the buck, and also that is then getting transferred through a visible chain up to the end customers. Very good example would be apparel and tea. There's a lot of NGO campaigns against not just Sri Lanka, mainly Bangladesh, but apparel and tea, saying that the workers are not getting paid. But the argument is that a lot of these apparel companies and even the tea companies, they give more than a basic wage, right? They give them food, they give them medical access, they give them all sorts of. There is no way to kind of quantify and give traceability, to this. And that is why I'm hoping one day that soon that our tree industry goes beyond just automating the auction, but tracing the whole value chain and putting it on a blockchain, creating visibility, creating impact, and you could get premium prices for this, right? And any NGO or any not-for-government organization that does this is going to be a winner in the world. If not, they're not going to get any funding, let alone a little bit of funding.
Exactly. So I actually have a lot of questions. There is a whole load of private questions and I think about 30 public questions. There's about 30 private questions. So it's altogether, I think it's a lot of questions, but I see a trend that there is a lot of people asking questions from Ramesh and Oshada. So I already shared the links of the LinkedIn profile. So I hope you guys don't get spammed, but if there's anything, I think there are some really good questions. I think to get those addressed, you can also reach out to them on their social profiles.
If you don't mind me interrupting, I think that's a very good question from Romita Vandar. I think it's fair enough that it's a long-winded question, right? But I think this has been a pertinent question across the industry right now with regard to this nighttime data and why this data is kept, and also the third point is the cost of data. So let me clarify this. I mean, this has been going around in circles, and I don't think anybody has taken the liberty to answer this, right? First and foremost, the question has been the cost of data in Sri Lanka. So let me reiterate this. If you take the 2017, that's the latest report from the International Telecommunication Union, right? You'd be surprised that for voice, right, we are the 12th cheapest across the world for voice charges, okay? And for data, we are the 33rd. So when you look at 195 countries, you need to understand there are certain operators that transfer the profit as well, obviously, because they have to put in required capex to expand the networks and all of that, right? So I think these are not concocted data from the government or whatever. You can go ping it up yourself from the ITU itself, right? And that's up for you to see. And this is from 2017, and we've come down the line another 2 years right now, where last November there was a lot of concessions on tax as well, which literally has brought down the cost by another 20%. So I think we are in a very good state in terms of cost, right? And that particular person's second point, this nighttime daytime matter that's been completely bouncing back and forth, right? Now what we need to understand is this nighttime component in reality is a component that is given free to consumers, okay? It is not charged. When it comes to DRC, the cost breakdowns, it is not charged. Literally, it's 1 cent per GB, literally. That's done for formality's sake, right? But however, why it's given is obviously we're looking at the utilization of the networks at the off-peak times. It has been offered as a value addition. But however, where the operators have gone wrong is the way they articulated their marcoms, right? They could have just simply said it's a free data bundle as opposed to talking about nighttime data. And I think their marketing also went astray in basically stating that, look, it's a particular amount of GB altogether on a package without stating the fact that, look, part of it is blocked off for the off-peak. So I think in reality, we are not. This is the pertinent question I had before I came and took on this role of DRC. And I personally looked into this, and we really don't pay for that off-peak data, right? And then that's a very important point to note. And this gentleman also asked about the utilization of internet for e-learning, for example. So I should reiterate the fact that, look, we've taken the first precedent this time around of pretty much whitelisting the e-learning system for all state universities. Right now, not a single student has to pay for the access to the e-learning. We're not stopped over there. We've just extended that even to the school, the K-12, from grade 1 to grade 13. The e-Taksala e-learning system is right now completely free as well, right? So, I mean, there are pragmatic steps that we've taken. What we need to understand in this whole scenario is the telecommunication networks right now is being used 10 times more than what it has been designed for, right? And we have to understand it's like opening up a highway to tuk-tuks and more mobiles, right? You need to understand that you need to balance off this. You need to ensure that the economy runs at least by providing the basic throughputs that's required to work from home. Now, no one's going to come back and ask, look, we can't do a video call. Right now, we are doing a video call without a single interruption, right? Fingers crossed. So I just want to reiterate this, as well. It's a very good question. And number two, there's another gentleman called Nishan asked about number portability. And I think I should proudly state that we've taken the first steps in this number portability. And I think all operators have given consent in terms of conceptually agreeing, to looking at this scenario. And I think I'm pretty confident in the next year or so, we can get the number portability going as well. And then that's been another interesting area that people have been looking at, and it's never been happening. And I think we are fairly confident that we can take those strides on in enabling those as well. So I think there's two questions that I want to take on, back to you.
Thank you so much, Oshad. I think actually that was that question was appearing again and again in so many different WhatsApp groups as well. So I think it's timely that you address that. So gentlemen and ladies, I think we are almost to the final of this. I would like to maybe get a quick, a few closing thoughts from you. So let me also frame a question so that you can put your thoughts around this as well. So I think it's not going to be 2019 again, but we are going to get out of this so slowly but surely. What does an individual person or a corporate do to create long-term value during this crisis for themselves and their stakeholders? Maybe we can start with Lakmini. You're on mute, Lakmini.
Sure. So thanks, Enosh. So our perspective from a corporate as a personal individual, this is actually a completely unique scenario, COVID. I mean, if you talk about 2019, 2020 is actually going to stand as one of those years that is completely unique. So as much as it's challenging, I sort of believe that the opportunities, those are the things that we must look at. And definitely, I mean, looking back years after, these are the things that we really have to take on. So I look at this as an opportunity. Thank you.
Ruanti?
I think this is the era where you have to open the gates for ideas and be able to pivot those ideas in the areas where we will be able to create greater value and create greater outcomes. And if we can open such channels and focus on that, I think this will create the start of not only new business channels, new products, and new ways of working.
Great. Joshua?
Yeah, sure. I think my one takeaway here is as you go through these transformations and you're starting to approach, how should you strategize and move forward? Don't be afraid to lean on different technology vendors and the expert consultants, right? Everything that you need to do has actually already been done some way, shape, or form already. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Rely on the Blue Lotus 360 team, rely on the Business Machines team. Find those different vendors that exist and use their expertise so that you don't make mistakes and you can just kind of get that best practice from the get-go. That's kind of my consulting answer for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joshua. Zulfa?
Yeah, I think the message is to be very optimistic, right? In every recession or every event our country have gone through, we've had some great results coming out, right? When I remember when I was in school, the central bank bomb happened, right? And immediately after that, MIT was born, right? And today MIT, obviously gone through so many takeovers, is one of the most respected IT organizations in our country. Just like Virtusa came out of the dot bust, right? Obviously it was called e-runway before, and then the company went through investments and they became a large organization. So every event creates opportunities. I think 2008 there were some other companies that came out. I think so this is an opportunity. Maybe we look back and say, what are the companies that came out of this kind of recession or this incident? It'd be nice to see. I think the opportunity is out there, and we just need to be very optimistic and be entrepreneurial in our thinking.
Thank you so much, Zulfa. Oshada, parting thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a time to look at emergent strategies than just traditional linear strategies, and I think and to get your house in order. And as I always say, it's time to look at the third horizon and look at new operating environments and new business models. And certainly, I think I can assure you that from a government perspective and the public sector, I've been rallying together as well in terms of supporting those initiatives on the private sector.
Thank you so much, Oshada. Ramesh?
I just want to reiterate the 3 points I stated at the beginning. First, be resilient. We got to anchor yourself, stay grounded, don't burn cash, don't do anything crazy. Whilst getting out of this crisis, I think we got to reimagine ourselves. And in reimagining ourselves, I feel the digital world, what's pertinent is every consumer is going to ask this question from us. I want what I want when I want it. Are we able to serve them? And in serving them, we should not aspire to own the entire value chain. Today's era of value ecosystems, on platforms and ecosystems, we got to collaborate, like the today's new world, like the pygmies, the payment instruments, the digital wallets, and then reimagine ourselves in terms of what would be, right? That's a big question, but I feel collectively we'll be answering that. I don't think a single organization will be able to answer that question alone, right? So that's the power of the technology and the digital platform, which will bring all of us together in solving the problem. So stay blessed, stay safe.
Very deep answer there, Ramesh. Finally, I would like to go to Imran. You usually have the textbook-worthy answer. So, Imran, close off.
I just want to answer a question from Lief, who is the Secretary General of the Sri Lanka Sweden Business Council. He had posted a question in the chat box, and then that kind of alludes to what I want to finish with. So Lief had asked, and he has brought a lot of investments into IT and BPM industry, and we're thankful to him for doing that. Look, how have our competitors, been faring in this lockdown? And that's a very interesting question to see. Number one, India is in chaos. I know that a lot of clients are unable to, get their BPM operation going in either India or Philippines, because they're massive countries, and for workers to come into their offices has been a problem. China is also a big IT BPM outsourcing player, right? And you can imagine where they are. So all our competitors are in chaos, right? And China is coming back. India, no idea when India or Philippines will be back, for example, right? And so for us, being a smaller country, while we are also in curfew, we have our IT BPM players have been, particularly been very resilient, simply because we have been through so many crises, like what Zulfa has said. So our business continuity planning is world class, right? And that has really stood out in terms of because we have had so many curfews, right? We've had so many natural disasters. Sri Lanka is a very resilient country, and our players have been very resilient. Only thing you need to understand is what I don't really see happening enough is that you need to understand that we are in a virtual world, right? So we are globalized, and that kind of thinking doesn't necessarily come. I'll give you a good example because I want to highlight something with Blue Lotus, right? They are a cloud-based ERP player, and I know that Neetu will confirm to you that they've been getting a huge amount of inquiries from agriculture, healthcare, the industry that are going to take off, because they finally realize not only should they get into ERP, but they need to get it so that they can operate in a virtual way, right? So that mentality, that thinking needs to be there. And also one more point to the established corporates, right? Because I have a lot of established corporate plans for Ramesh and one of the reasons why the boards aren't been unable really to kind of make those decisions is because they are analyzed on very financial metrics, right? And a new generation of analysts are coming out, young, highly technologically savvy analysts are heading the brokerages in Sri Lanka who write the reports that will determine your share price. I've had chats with them. I'm amazed at the kind of thinking that they have on what corporates need to do. But now, so far, they've been silent because we've been operating as business as usual. One thing that I will see that will happen after this is they're going to come to the fore, right? So the people with the kind of different kind of thinking are going to make decisions, and they're going to communicate that decisions to very important decision makers. So I think there has never been a more exciting time to be alive and to be virtual, whether you're in a small island nation like this or any other part of the world, because this is your time. And I think I've never been more excited than I have been, in the last 3 or 4 months, because it's finally our moment.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Imran. I think that is worthy to be printed. So from virtual meetings, online orders to drone delivery, digital services are growing in importance, and I think it's enabling increasing number of sectors and activities. Definitely, I think digitally agile firms are adapting to the new world. So I think, gentlemen, and ladies, we had an amazing discussion today. So just to, I mean, we are not physically present here, but just to make sure we're all having our smiling faces, I'm going to take some screenshots. So on the count of 3, 3, 2, 1, smile, smile. Yeah, super. So I think it was amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Neetu. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Blue Lotus and Mr. Machines for putting this together. And thank you all panelists for allocating your time. It has been an amazing evening discussing some really insightful topics with you. Thank you once again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers all. Bye.
Bye.